Welcome to the Money Smart for Adults Module 7 Borrowing Basics. We're going to go through this instructor guide and highlight how you can facilitate this training. As in all other modules, it starts out here with a contents page, giving you all the information related to this module, listed by section and page number, so that you know exactly where to find things here. Background information for instructors, as with other modules, is exactly the same. Starts out with a reference to the tools you'll be using to deliver the training, including the guide to presenting Money Smart for Adults. The training preparation checklist is to make sure that you have everything that's going to equip you to have a successful training. Materials that you may need. As in other modules, this is a checklist of all that you're going to need to deliver the training, including the instructor guide, participant guide, and PowerPoint slides. Regarding the participant guide, if it's a challenge for you to give copies to everyone in your training, please refer them to the online version or some other solutions that may be appropriate. Optional materials such as the parking lot for questions and supplies for any optional introductory activity that you may be doing should be on hand. Understanding the icons. This section is the same as for all other modules in the Money Smart for Adults training. You can reference them here as a refresher if you need to. The module purpose is to help participants to understand options for borrowing money and what they cost. This module also discusses how to borrow money and covers borrowing when someone helps manage someone else's money. Module at a glance table. We estimate that you're going to need 2 hours to cover the entire module, not including breaks or any optional introductory activities. Now, I want to give you a note here. Participants may have several questions about credit histories, reports, and scores during this module. So please consider presenting Module 6, Credit Reports and Scores, before presenting this module. In addition to that, Module 8, Managing Debt, provides information and resources relating to managing debt, and Module 9, Using Credit Cards, provides information and resources related to credit cards. Consider using content from those modules in your training based on the needs of the participants. So I'll repeat that. Consider doing Module 6 prior to this particular module, just based on the credit reports and scores information. And then consider adding content from modules 8 and 9 into this training, depending upon the needs of your participants. Please refer to the Guide to Presenting Money Smart for Adults, which includes additional information on selecting sections for specific audiences so that you can further customize your training. Looking at the module at a glance table headers, you'll notice sections, the key takeaways, the purpose objectives, and the time estimates all laid out here for you. Here's the module opening, and you're going to be showing slide 1, which is the title of the module. And as in every module in the Money Smart for Adults training, you're going to complete a few tasks, such as welcoming participants as they arrive, introduce yourself, ask them to sign in, ensure any requested reasonable accommodations are in place, and make any necessary adjustments. And then once you're ready to begin the training, ask participants to complete the pre-training survey, and you'll be showing slide number 2. Parking lot and participant guide. Establish a flip chart poster for a parking lot and inform your participants that it's questions, concerns, ideas, and resources that you'll address during breaks or at the end of training. Mention that the participant guide is theirs to use during and after the session. Encourage them to take notes and write in them. And if time permits, start your training with an optional introductory activity. I highly recommend that you do this, as it's a great way to get participants energized and ready to learn. You'll find suggestions for fun activities in the Guide to Presenting Money Smart for Adults, or you can use your own. Section 1, Ways to Borrow Money and What It Costs. Objectives here is to help participants to be able to define types of loans, distinguish between secured and unsecured loans, list costs associated with borrowing money, compare loan offers, including using Truth in Lending Act disclosures. Truth in Lending Act is also known as TILA. Let's pause for a moment to point out some helpful navigation features of the instructor guide. There's helpful information in the headers and footer that will help you stay oriented. In the header, the right-hand side reminds you that you're looking at the instructor guide. This is helpful if you happen to also consult a copy of the participant guide during your training. The left-hand side of the header identifies the section you're in. The footer identifies the module along with the page number. Now, these modules can seem like they all look alike, but you can always know where you are by looking at the headers and footers. You'll notice there are facilitation instructions: say, ask, do, show slide. These are prompts to guide you through the flow of the training through the section topics. Now, beginning with slide number 3, you're introducing the section ways to borrow money and what it costs. Slide number 4, you're introducing the key takeaway, which is to be sure you can afford the payments before getting a loan. Also, know how much it will cost and what will happen if you can't pay it back. The first topic in this section, what borrowing means. You're going to be giving a definition of credit and debt. Slide number 6, you're going to be introducing the types of loans, installment and revolving, and how they are both repaid. Now, the next 2 slides are going to get into services that are not loans. And this is because when you get to the activity, there is an option for the scenario participant to really consider one of these options. And so we have a mention of it here in these next 2 slides. Starting with slide number 7, rent to own. It's where they go and rent on a monthly or weekly basis. Then the next slide, number 8, going into buying on layaway. Again, not a loan, but they're going to pay an initial deposit and then make payments over time. The next topic, slide number 9, secured and unsecured loans. Secured loans requiring collateral, unsecured loans not requiring collateral. The cost of borrowing on slide number 10. This is where you're going to be discussing with the participants the principal, the money they borrowed, interest, the amount of money financial institution charges, and then fees that may be charged for certain activities. Then slide number 11, prepayment. You'll be discussing early repayment of the loan that may reduce interest costs, pays off the loan, or early repayment of part of the loan where it generally reduces interest costs, or potentially an earlier payoff date. Now, that's going to be great. People are going to be excited about that, prepaying their loan, paying it off early, but there are some loans that have prepayment penalties and others do not. So there is a distinction there, but this is going to be helpful for participants to know this information. So as we go into the first activity, the triad activity, we have a scenario where Ben explores her options for buying new furniture. So as in other activities, either read it aloud yourself or ask a volunteer to do so. However, because this particular scenario contains several numbers and dollar amounts, it might be confusing if read aloud. So you may alternatively want to give participants a few minutes to read it themselves, if that works out for your group. Now, you're going to give them about 6 minutes to review the questions and to answer them. Now, they can get in groups so that they can discuss it while they're actually doing the activity, but you want to make sure that you go through each of the questions one by one and then, of course, discuss their answers. Give them an opportunity to tell you what they think. Now, after this activity, it goes into slide number 13, which is truth in lending and comparing offers. Now, getting back into the Truth in Lending Act, which is written disclosures that shows loan terms in clear and uniform manner. This is very important that participants understand that they will receive a TILA disclosure before they sign for a loan, and it can also serve as a comparison tool when looking at other loan offers. Now, the next few slides, we're going to get into actually showing them a part of a sample TILA disclosure and going through some of the math. Slide number 14 shows the annual percentage rate, finance charge, amount financed, and total payments based on a 5 $5,000 loan. Now, please note that disclosures for mortgages, home loans, and some other student loans will look different than this. Okay, so the information might be formatted differently. So tell participants that they might have different formats and forms of this, but that the information may still be the same in terms of the information that's being disclosed. So after looking at slide number 14 and helping participants be familiar with what a sample TILA is and the information there, you're going to go to slide number 15, which now gets into the math. So you're actually explaining to participants how the finance charge is actually calculated. Then on slide number 16, you are actually looking at the total number of payments where you're taking the finance charge plus the amount financed. So the 600 plus the 5,000 equals the 5,600 total of payments that will be paid on this particular transaction. So you're showing them how this all works, looking at each of these elements of the truth in lending disclosure, making sure that they understand it, and again, using this as a tool that can help them shop around, which on slide 17, you're actually encouraging participants to actually use this as a way to compare with other types of loans. Also, help is there if they need it. Encourage them to seek out help from the housing counseling agencies approved by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development or credit counseling organizations. Then to wrap up this section, we have our key takeaway again, which is to be sure you can afford the payments before getting a loan. Also, know how much it will cost and what will happen if you can't pay it back. Section 2, preparing to apply for a loan. Objectives. Participants will be able to list factors lenders may use to evaluate loan applications, identify ways to improve how lenders might evaluate them as loan applicants, and distinguish between co-borrowing and co-signing and know important facts and risks related to each. Introduce the section with slide number 19 and introduce the key takeaway with slide number 20, which is considering what lenders look for when deciding to loan money helps prepare you to apply for a loan. The topic that begins this section, factors lenders may use in their decisions. This is on slide number 21, and you're going to notice here the factors are referred to by lenders as the 4 C's or the 5 C's, and you'll see them here: credit, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. And so the next several slides, slide 22 through 25, actually is taking each of these C's and defining them with their particular details and characteristics. So you'll want to do that, making sure that your participants really understand what each of these are, following the script prompts that are inside the instructor guide here on page 24 and page 25, giving you exactly what to say about each of these particular C's. Then you're going to get into the activity, the triad activity, getting ready to borrow. This scenario is really to help participants to be in the place of a lender in terms of viewing Sandra's capacity, capital, credit, and character, and asking participants how they would evaluate her. And so give them 8 minutes to go through to look at the questions and to answer them based on what they've taken from the scenario. Then go ahead and ask them to share their answers, write their responses on a flip chart or a whiteboard, and then add the information from the answer key if not contributed. And you'll see the answer key in the instructor guide here at the bottom of page 27 and the top of page 28. This is a great segue into the apply it activity, slide number 27. It's getting myself ready to borrow. That's on page 12 in the participant guide, and you will suggest that they can do this after training. This may take them a little bit of time to go through, but this is very, very important to get them to understand whether or not those same things that they just evaluated Chandra on from the lender's perspective, now they have an opportunity to do that for themselves with this activity. The next topic in this section, co-borrowing and co-signing and the differences between the both. Co-borrowing, taking out a loan jointly with others. Co-signing, proceeds going to the borrower, not the co-signer, and the co-signer promising to pay if the borrower does not. There are distinct differences between the two, and making sure that participants understand what they are. Slide number 29 introduces the next activity, Apply It, my tip sheet for considering co-signing someone else's loan. Now, of course, you can have them start to work on this here in your training, or you can suggest that they complete the worksheet after the training. But the key here is the different things that they have to think about in terms of whether or not co-signing is appropriate for them. The first part of the thought process is questions to ask yourself before co-signing, and then you'll see there are 4 questions there that participants can think through, and then ways to protect yourself as a co-signer, getting notified and getting copies. And so this is things that will help a participant to really consider whether or not this is something that's appropriate for them going forward. And then finally, wrapping up the section with slide number 30, reiterating the key takeaway, which is considering what lenders look for when deciding to loan money helps prepare you to apply for a loan. Section 3, borrowing when someone else helps you manage your money. Objectives, participants will be able to list responsibilities of people who are helping them manage their money and to know what to discuss with the person providing help. You're going to introduce this section on slide number 31. Slide number 32, you're going to introduce the key takeaway. Even if someone helps you manage your money, understand the terms of a loan before you commit to it. Now, there are 3 specific topics relating to this section around really helping your participants to understand how to make these decisions. Starting out with the responsibilities of the person helping you. That's on slide 33, and of course there are some prompts that will lead you here in the instructor guide of what to say regarding this. Slide number 34 gets into what to discuss. There are prompts there that gives you points to say to help your participants to think this through. Then the next slide, number 35, if you decide to borrow money, in terms of information around getting help considering the terms, completing the application, and then, of course, lenders not considering the creditworthiness of the person helping. And then, of course, the prompt to ask for help if they need it, to remember to make timely payments and to keep good records. The section closing here is about remembering the key takeaway. Even if someone helps you manage your money, understand the terms of a loan before you commit to it. Module closing. Remember the key takeaways from each of the sections and to reiterate them to your participants. And then every module has the same take action activity. It's important not to skip it, even if you can only spare a couple of minutes. The participants will remember what you just presented a lot easier if they can write down a few action steps. So knowledge isn't enough, action is required. So have them to answer those questions. What will I do? Okay. How will I do it? And will I share my plans with anyone? If so, then who? Very, very important, especially with this particular module on all of these decisions around borrowing money and co-signing. This very, very important. So please emphasize this take action activity at the end. So showing slide number 38 as you're administering the post-training survey and having the answer key here, you can use this to, again, compare the answers between both the pre and post-training surveys completed for this particular module. You'll see here on page 42, you'll see where Module 7 fits into the overall training curriculum for Money Smart for Adults. And that will conclude our overview and highlights of the Money Smart for Adults Module 7 Borrowing Basics.